Hello, today we are going to learn all about earthquakes. You may wonder why studying earthquakes is interesting or even important, and I'm going to tell you why. Earthquakes are one of nature's greatest phenomena. Earthquakes are natural disasters that cause a lot of damage and claim many lives each year. Between 1998 and 2017, 750,000 lives were lost due to earthquakes alone. This is more than half the total lives lost to natural disasters globally. It is important that we learn about earthquakes so we can better prepare to deal with their effects. Naturally, this might lead you to question, what even is an earthquake? Earthquakes occur where there is sudden movement along fault lines. A fault is a fracture between two large rock masses where slippage can occur. There are different types of fault lines that have different motions associated with them depending on how the rock slipped. When the rock masses slip suddenly along the fault line, they release elastic energy that has been stored and built up in rocks. This energy is carried out from the focus point in spherical waves as shown in the diagram. These are called seismic waves. Now let's get into more detail about what causes earthquakes. The key to understanding earthquakes is understanding tectonic plates. The Earth's crust is made up of tectonic plates that float on the lithosphere. These plates are always moving, and some are moving into each other or against each other. Sometimes, when the plates are grinding against each other, they get stuck, causing friction between the plates. This constant friction creates a lot of stored energy between the rocks. When there is sudden movement between the plates, earthquakes occur because there is a lot of released energy from the friction. In this diagram, the red lines represent plate boundaries, and the arrows show the direction in which they move. The red triangles represent subduction zones, where one plate moves under another. This causes a lot of earthquake activity. In this next diagram, you can see that most earthquakes happen along tectonic plate boundaries, reinforcing the idea that these are the cause of earthquakes. The areas where there is the most earthquake activity is in the subduction zones. This is especially seen around the Pacific Plate. This area along the west coast of the Americas and the east coast of Asia is often referred to as the Ring of Fire. As mentioned earlier, earthquakes produce seismic waves, which is what causes the tremors we feel in the ground. Seismic waves are waves of energy that are created by the sudden breaking of rock inside the earth, like in an earthquake. There are two types of seismic waves called body and surface waves. Body waves are the first to arrive from an earthquake. They take place in Earth's interior, and they also travel at a higher frequency opposed to surface waves. There are different kinds of body waves known as primary and secondary waves, often abbreviated to P and S waves. Primary waves are compression waves, meaning the particles within the wave move parallel to the direction the P wave is traveling. S waves are transverse waves, meaning the particles move perpendicular to the direction of travel. P waves can move through all kinds of material, while S waves can only travel through solids. The other type of seismic waves are called surface waves. There are also two types of surface waves, love waves and Rayleigh waves. Love waves are faster than Rayleigh waves. They also move in an entirely horizontal motion, moving the ground side to side. Rayleigh waves roll along the ground, moving the ground up and down and side to side in the direction the wave travels. This is a similar motion as waves along the ocean. The shaking felt during an earthquake is largely due to Rayleigh waves. Now let's talk about some of the local effects of earthquakes in New York City. New York City is not thought of as a tremor hotspot, but the 5 boroughs are riddled with fault lines. According to the statistical record, New York is susceptible to a magnitude 5 earthquake once every 100 years, a magnitude 6 earthquake around every 670 years, and a magnitude 7 around every 3,400 years. A magnitude 5.2 earthquake shook Manhattan back in 1737 and 1884. The time gap between them is 147 years. It has been 137 years since the last magnitude 5 earthquake in New York City. The prediction of the next large earthquake in New York City will be around 2031 to 2034. However, it is important to remember that we do not yet have the science or technology to correctly predict earthquakes. This is just based on scientific hunches. New York City passed their first seismic building codes in 1995. The Department of Buildings updated it in 2008 to make buildings stronger, more flexible, and more ductile. It also requires the critical facilities such as firehouses and hospitals to survive an earthquake and remain open and functional. In 2014, the Department of Buildings revised the construction codes. The new buildings created in New York City were designed to have less damage during an earthquake. Considering the New York City buildings are built on soft soil, the building designs must ensure that joints and structural connections are flexible to certain site-specific soil conditions. It must also ensure that building foundations, building contents, architectural contents, and electrical and mechanical systems are also specified. Even though the new strict standard can decrease the potential loss of new buildings, the majority of buildings in Manhattan were built before the codes were implemented. We still need to put in a lot of effort into avoiding the major effects following an earthquake. That's all on earthquakes for now. I hope that this was helpful and you learned something. Thanks for watching. Bye!